When you think of absolute power, of total opulence, of a king who literally said, I am the state, there's really only one name that comes to mind: Louis XIV of France, the Sun King. But how on earth did one man become the living, breathing symbol of monarchy itself? Well, let's get into it.
Okay, first, just look at this number: 72 years and 110 days. I mean, that's not just a long time. That is the longest reign of any major monarch in recorded history. He didn't just rule a country for a while, he was the entire era. Think about it. He took the throne when he was just 4 years old, and he then spent the next 7 decades carefully building this larger-than-life image of absolute, unquestionable power. His reign was so long, so all-encompassing, that he literally became the poster child for absolutism, an idea that would shape Europe for the next 100 years. So that really brings us to the big question, right? How did he pull it off? How did one guy manage to grab all the power, tame a bunch of rebellious nobles, and make France the center of the world? What was the secret sauce? What was the method behind this legendary reign?
Well, to understand the Sun King, you can't start with the shiny, glittering halls of Versailles. No, that's not the beginning. You have to go back to the sheer terror of his childhood, because the key to his entire reign, everything he ever did, was forged in the fire of a really nasty civil war. That civil war was called the Fronde. It was this chaotic, messy, and humiliating time when pretty much all the powerful nobles in France rose up against the throne. And for young Louis, this wasn't some abstract political problem. No, this was deeply personal, and it taught him a lesson he would carry with him for the rest of his life. I mean, can you imagine this? You're just a little kid and a furious mob smashes into your bedroom, demanding to see you. Louis had to pretend to be asleep while they all just stood there, staring down at him. That kind of profound humiliation sticks with you. It created this ironclad resolve to never, ever be that powerless again. So yeah, the Fronde basically became his political playbook. From that moment on, he had this deep, deep distrust of the nobles. He developed a lasting hatred for the city of Paris, which he saw as rebellious. And most importantly, it gave him this rock-solid belief that all power, every last bit of it, had to be in his hands and his hands alone. And this burning need for control led directly to his most brilliant and, let's be honest, his most famous creation, the Palace of Versailles. But you have to understand, this place wasn't just a home. It was a brilliantly designed political weapon. His plan was just devastatingly simple, really. He realized he didn't need to crush the aristocracy with armies. No, he would just domesticate them. He was going to turn these powerful, scary feudal lords into, well, glorified servants, all competing for his attention. The system he came up with was pure genius. Step 1. Force all the important nobles to leave their own castles and their sources of regional power and come live with him at court. Step 2. Trap them in this ridiculously complicated and expensive web of court rituals and etiquette. And step 3, make it crystal clear that every single bit of status, money, or favor came directly from him. And the result was this complete transformation of what power even meant. In places like the incredible Hall of Mirrors, you didn't fight for power with a sword anymore. No, you fought for it by trying to get the honor of holding the king's candlestick as he went to bed. The battlefield was replaced by the ballroom. It was a gilded cage, and the crazy part is, the nobles walked right into it. By turning these once mighty warriors into ceremonial courtiers, Louis completely neutralized them. He made absolutely sure that another Fronde could never, ever happen. But being the master of your own house wasn't enough. To truly be the Sun King, Louis had to shine all across Europe. He needed glory. And back in the 17th century, glory meant one thing above all else: war. So under his rule, the French army became the biggest and baddest in Europe, period. War was just a constant humming background noise to his entire reign. It was his main tool for grabbing more land and, maybe just as important, for building up his own personal brand as this great warrior king. And the scale of this was just immense. I mean, look at this list. The Franco-Dutch War, the 9 Years' War, the War of the Spanish Succession. His time as king was basically defined by one massive war after another, all of it designed to make France the undisputed top dog. But here's the thing. For Louis, this wasn't just about cold, hard strategy. It was deeply personal.
As one historian put it, his wars were driven by a mix of commerce, revenge, and pique. It was all about his relentless personal quest for glory. Of course, all that glitter at Versailles and all that glory on the battlefield, it came with a price tag. And it was a staggering one. This is where we have to turn and look at the very dark side of the Sun King's reign. Just let this number sink in for a second. 2 million. That's how many French people are estimated to have died in just 2 major famines during his reign. Famines that were made so much worse because all the nation's money was being poured into Louis's endless wars. While the court was literally dancing at Versailles, a huge part of the country was starving to death. And then there was the religious persecution. See, in his obsession with absolute unity, Louis canceled something called the Edict of Nantes. This had been a promise of religious tolerance to France's Protestants, the Huguenots. But with one stroke of his pen, he made the religion illegal, shut down their churches, and told them to either convert to Catholicism or get out. The result was an absolute catastrophe for France. About 200,000 of the country's most skilled workers and merchants, the Huguenots, packed up and left. They took all their skills, their knowledge, and their money with them and went straight to France's enemies. It was a massive self-inflicted wound, all for the sake of religious control. So when you step back and look at the whole colossal reign, what's the final verdict? Well, Louis XIV left behind a legacy that was as brilliant as it was fragile. He built France into this powerhouse, but he also left it totally exhausted and on the verge of bankruptcy. You know, maybe the king himself said it best. On his deathbed, he supposedly confessed to his great-grandson, "I have loved war too much." He admitted that he'd done it for vanity. Just a stunning moment of self-awareness right at the very end. So that's his dual legacy, right? On the one hand, he made France the undisputed leader of Europe. He oversaw this golden age of art and culture, and he created the modern centralized French state. But on the other hand, he left behind a kingdom that was just drowning in debt and exhausted from decades of nonstop war. And that leaves us with one last big question to think about. By perfecting this system of absolute monarchy, by concentrating every last bit of power into his own hands, did the Sun King, in all his glory, also accidentally pave the road for that system's violent and total destruction in the French Revolution less than a century later?